summit conference. We don't have a translation to English yet, but we have the pleasure today to have this this session, which is a round table. It's a conversation that we're going to have with a
summit
special
conference.
guest.
We don't have a translation to English yet,
Professor Mathaib.
we have the pleasure today to have this
India. He's a professor
this session,
at the Research
which is
Center at the
a
University
round table
of Gujarat,
conversation that we're going to have with
and,
summit
we have
conference. We don't have a translation to English yet. Professor Mathaib. We have the pleasure today to have this this session, which is a round table conversation that we're going to have with summit conference. We don't have a translation to English yet. The pleasure today to have this session,
title of this panel is
Pensando, globalmente, conversation that we're going to have with summit conference.
the overall theme of our conference. So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask the pleasure today to have this session. We're going to ask you for a few important topics to us. First of all, you'd like to talk to us a little bit about the violence in the world and how can we work with non-violence today, especially about the youth and also who are already with general concern. Secondly, how can we think about the role of conflict with non-violence in this scenario? And finally, we would like to hear thoughts about, social transformation. What we need to do to make this world more peaceful and thinking about social transformation in general. So I'm going to pass the floor to Professor Mathaib. He's going to talk us around 20 minutes, as long as you wish, and then we're going to discuss with our colleagues and thank you so much for the preparation in general.
You can hear me? Actually, I'm very happy to be here. Leandro happens to be my student and friend. So I thank him for talking to me. My pleasure. Actually, we are very happy to be here, kind of doing an opening kind of topic or reference for my student and friend. So frankly speaking, if you want to do justice to this topic, take at least actually 20 to 24 hours in opening. Because each topic has to be dealt with very frankly speaking, if you want exhaustive, if you want to. I will just say only a few, not say, but make a few observations, general observations. Each topic has to be dealt with very. Why do we talk about peace? Very serious. You know that day after tomorrow, the 21st of September, is International Day of Peace. And all over the world, you see that there is very serious military subject as a discipline, also as a force of action. All over the world, to study peace, there are peace studies departments more and more military in the world, and people are more interested in doing peace rather than talking about peace or studying force of action or researching peace. Study peace for probably for more than 2 decades we have been doing peace research. Peace studies are more interested in. Now people feel that the time has come for us to talking about do peace, to act in such a way that we will be able to realize the goal of peace. And the reason why we are so concerned about particularly this new millennium, now people feel that there is obviously there is an escalation and intensification of violence. Escalation means violence. The reason why really is spreading to almost all the branches, all the departments of human life. Obviously there is an intensification of violence means the degree of violence, the intensity of violence increasingly spreading to almost all the most of the acts of violence these days call it terrorism, extremism, adventurism, whatever. The victims are innocent people, not people who are directly associated with conflict, who are responsible for conflict, who are really trying to rescue innocent people are targeted, obviously targeted. And then we hear every day that school children are responsible for guns and shooting their friends, teachers, domestic violence is increasing, violence in the street. So there's an escalation, obviously. I need not have to give you examples of several points. And there is also the intensification of what I call the intensification of violence. Domestic violence is a degree of violence. Violence in the street. Earlier, if a person, somebody slapped on your face, that was considered to be highly offensive. Now it is, there is also the mutilation of the human body, not just by shooting a bullet in your chest, not enough, just mutilate the human body. Earlier, the brutality of the human psyche has intensified to such an extent that you see there is mutilation of the human body, very distressing by intensification of violence, bullet in your chest. And therefore, people have seen brutality, necessity to address this problem urgently. Otherwise, I think that we are going to face very serious catastrophic times. That is why there is so much concerted attempt at establishing urgency by trying to make peace, build peace, attain peace, so on. That is one point. The second point is, how do we address the problem of violence? There was a time when people thought that violence could be controlled and removed, eliminated by using more violence. The second point is, and now it has become indisputably clear that by using counter-violence or using more violence, you are not going to really tackle the problem of violence, more violence. Because violence is part of an ideology. Violence cannot stand per se by itself. By using counter-violence as we see today, which poses a threat to human existence, human survival, is part of an ideology. And ideologies have to be addressed at the level inevitable. And what can we do, people who believe in peace and non-violence, what can we do violence at the global level is very limited. On the contrary, what we can do locally will be more effective. So acting locally is the best way to counter what is happening. The global violence is actually a sum total of what is happening at local level. So there is an organic relationship between local violence and global violence. Global violence is not something separate from it. And just like that, when we are resisting the use of violence locally by building non-violent direct action in local areas in order to address local problems, then that will be having a kind of butterfly effect in the rest of the world. I don't have to say to people in Brazil, the old saying that when a butterfly flutters its wings in the Amazon, there will be, in Texas, there will be a cyclone. So similarly, there is a butterfly effect. What we do locally is not going to be confined locally, particularly in this age of, internet connectivity. What is happening in one place will be definitely communicated to the rest of the world, all over the world. So when for example, the Economic Forum was meeting in Seattle, there were protests all over the world. Even in the small locality where I was living, people were staging protests. So the local protest is not going to have only a local effect, local ripple effect, but it is going to have a butterfly effect throughout the world. So although the problem is global, and we have a feeling that unless this is solved globally by the leaders of the nation, maybe through G7 meeting or G20 meeting, whatever be, but we will be able to contribute substantially to the solution of this problem by organizing non-violence locally and building resistance locally, because that is going to have a butterfly effect throughout the world. So that is why local action is necessary. I will say one more point and conclude. You see, why is it so important? If you want to have peace, yesterday I think that it was Leandro who told me that somebody was going to discuss a point, the future of peace. The future of peace. Actually, what we must concern ourselves with is not the future of peace, but we must understand that peace is our future. We should not be worried about the future of peace, but peace is our future. And therefore, the only way to survive is to build peace, is to remove violence through non-violence and build peace. And if we eliminate violence, if we focus our attention exclusively and then
see in people a loss of hope. People are losing hope. You see clearly when you talk to people. So this is a huge problem because people don't usually engage in action of activism or maybe in social transformation or maybe in education. So we have to change that. So part of our job is to change this losing of hope in people, talking to people, producing good works, good events. Sometimes an event like this, it's a good moment for people to start believing in humanity again. So we meet a lot of interesting people here, so it's a good event for believing in mankind. We know that we are living a kind of a collapse in the world, in many fields, social, political, environmental, in many fields, political crisis, but at the same time, we have to believe that it's possible. Always believe that it's possible and convince people that this is possible, because this losing of hope becomes a huge problem. We can engage people for action. The second point that I want to say is that we must not be afraid to say that this escalation of violence comes from the system, the economic system, capitalism in our country, a capitalist country. It generates the escalation of violence, and we cannot be afraid to say that. We have to make effort as a structural change. Structural change in society. This is my second point. The third point, I think the main strategy to be the change is activism and education, in my understanding. To be activist, non-violent activist in many different fields at this moment is not only necessary but urgent. All of us must see ourselves as activists and be in the field active, not only in social media, but in the field. There's a good book that was published in Brazil this year that is called Delicate Activism. It's a South African author. It's a good book on activism that could inspire us how to build a nonviolent activism to resist for this injustice that the professor said. But not only activism. We must also be concerned about education of children, education of teenagers. I think São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro and many other cities are living at this moment kind of a collapse, emotional collapse in our schools, and not only the public schools, private schools, everywhere. People are stressed, people have depression, anxiety, and many other emotional disease. We know that this is partly because of the COVID-19, but also it's because this collapse in society. So we must make a huge change in our education, in our schools, looking not only for peace education, but education for peace. We were this morning discussing about that, the difference about peace education and education for peace. We must act in both fields, and there are many ways of acting for peace education and education for peace. So this is the second way that we can engage ourselves for social transformation. And also, the last point we must do our best to spread the tools of conflict resolution and restorative justice. I know that conflict resolution and restorative justice is spreading a lot in Brazil and in many other countries of the world. Many people are talking about that. But at the same time, we must be a little bit, how can I say? We must take care of how we use those tools, not to use in a wrong way, how is happening in some places. So a place like this is a good place for discussing this kind of thing and to get mature in the ways of we have to do in the present moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leandro. And I'll pass the floor now to Luís for his considerations.
All right. How long? 15, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I feel especially honored to be a part of this table together with Leandro, Roberta, and Professor Mathaib. And I would like to congratulate Roberta and Marcos and other people that have been responsible for this 6th EBEP to happen. That's very important for us here in Brazil, and I think for everyone in the world that is somewhat worried about how things are happening and how violence is taking place in such a radical and extreme way and destructive way. I'd like to say also that it's beautiful to see your relationship with Professor Mathaib and the opportunity for you to have this moment with him here in Brazil. I also had my conflict and peace and conflict studies formation outside from Brazil. Hopefully we can have it even more available here for the Brazilian people. I had to travel overseas and stay and live in Europe for 2 years more or less, from 2013 to 2015, to study peace and conflict and to dedicate myself to that. So with this type of initiative that you guys are doing here, we can show and we can show to people that it's possible to make it happen in Brazil in a very professional way, in a careful way, and in a quality way. So it's nice to see that this bond persists, and you are generous enough to share a little bit of that with us. And it's very honoring very flattering to have the opportunity to be beside someone like Professor Mathaib with his journey and with his dedication to peace studies and to the realization of nonviolence as a tool for transformation. I will try to share with you, and I hope it makes sense. I had a lot of insights as I was listening to them and as I was coming to this event, and I will try to share with you the best that I can, and just highlighting that much of what I'm feeling like sharing with you comes from what is more alive in my heart right now, regarding the activities that I'm engaged with and everything that is happening and taking place in the world. I think that one of the great challenges when we talk about nonviolence is that sometimes we forget that we have to cultivate and cherish and build knowledge and technology for things to happen. This is taking place with violence. Violence is a very well understood, well worked tool in different institutions. And I think one of the main challenges of that is, and I didn't know that, and we usually tend to forget it, is that there is a very complicated symbiosis between peace and violence. Institutionally, for the most part, violence happens as a discourse for peace to be achieved. We have to question that. We have to question many assumptions that are so usually taken for granted, and we just think is normal. So I think one of the main responsibilities that I think we have is to question those assumptions. And one of them is that we naturalize things, and that sometimes we naturalize violence. So to talk about nonviolence, to make things happen, to promote transformation, we have to learn new tools. We have to learn and cherish and test and allow ourselves to error, to live the mistakes, to see and understand what are the best options and the best pathways. Sometimes we don't do that. We think that, well, let's hear this Indian professor talk about nonviolence. He will bring all the solutions that we need, and let's see if we can do something with that. It doesn't work like that. This is one thing. The other thing is that for us to build this so-called new toolkit, or those new knowledges, is for us to understand that that's not actually so new, and that we have it in us and within us and among our communities. And it doesn't, I mean, that doesn't mean that it's easy and that we can automatically access it. But I think one of the reasons that we are alive today and that we feel motivated to talk about peace and nonviolence, it's because it's part of our lives, even if unconsciously. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Cherishing relationships, talking about things that makes us feel good, going after objectives in our lives that are connected to our purposes, talking about things that inspire us. So I think one of the challenges is that we easily forget that which inspires us, and we easily put behind very good and valuable examples that could provide us with inspiration and with a great deal of learning. So when I talk to people, I try to invite them. Look at your life, look at your family, look at good examples that you can recall and think about throughout your history, in things and events that you engaged with your family, with your friends, people that inspired you to do good things. Were they violent or no? Usually they were not. You yourself as a human being, you appreciate being treated respectfully. Think about every moment that you were treated respectfully and how this affected your mind and your heart. What was it? How did it happen? Do you feel good when you think about trying to multiplicate it or do it, repeat it with other people? Spreading this sensation, this good sensation that you had when you were treated respectfully. So those are very accessible things to us. I think that even when we talk about Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., they were both two of the most inspiring figures to me when I decided to dedicate myself to the field of peace and conflict studies. Well, we can more or less, even especially nowadays with the internet, we can more or less easily access their life work and videos about them and speeches. But one is Indian and died, passed away 70 years ago, more or less. The other is North American, passed away 68. Well, both of them were assassinated, unfortunately. Well, they did much of their work in a cultural background different from ours. Of course, much of what they taught is very inspiring, and we can replicate and apply much of what they shared with us. But we can, and I think we should try to think about examples and histories that are maybe closer to us. And that doesn't stop me to still feel inspired and enjoy from everything those two people left to us with their biographies. But I think we can look closer. And I think culturally we can do that, religiously we can do that, communally we can do that. Religiously, for example, much of what we are living politically here in Brazil, much of the challenge that we're living nowadays, that permeates in different dimensions of our lives, politically, institutionally, is related to how religion promotes violence, especially from a Christianity point of view. Well, we can choose to listen to those voices that try to legitimize violence through religion, but we can also explore and go after very good examples from Christianity that promote nonviolence and that actually try to explain and sustain the ethical aspect of this religion based on nonviolence. We can do that if we look to Islam, to Buddhism. Well, many of us may think that Buddhism is more easily, but don't forget that a genocide took place here in Myanmar because of a extreme religious Buddhist discourse. So Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, well, Hinduism, we can choose to look for the violent aspect of it or to the non-violent aspect of it. And in many other aspects of our lives. When I was listening to Professor Mathaib here, it reminded me of the words of Martin Luther King on April 3rd, 1968, which was the day before he was assassinated. And it's a very beautiful and famous speech of his. And at this speech, he said something that I will share with you now that he repeated many other times before that, which is, it's not about choosing between violence or non-violence in this world. It's between non-violence or non-existence. Well, back in 1968, the threat of a nuclear exchange that would destroy humanity was much more a reality. I think maybe nowadays it's even more a risk than back then, but that's what was in his mind and in the mind of many people. And I like to recall that because I think we have an ethical commitment. When I talk about the need for us to access and develop and nourish and cherish knowledge and tools to transform the world nonviolently, this is very much related to how we choose to live our lives and how we choose to dedicate our creative potential. A few days ago, we just witnessed a collective attack based on little pagers or communication tools in a very innovative way. People are still understanding what took place. So just think about how much resources, time, money, people had to dedicate themselves to for this type of violent action to take place. Now imagine if we could use this creative potential to transform and do things, but in a non-violent way. And I don't think we are doing that. So one other thing that I want to throw at you, and in honor of Gandhi, of course, is to remind something that was not necessarily easy for me to realize, it took me a while, is when we say that this nonviolent potential is within us, is present within us, we don't need to transform our nature to enjoy from that. It doesn't mean that we have to become enlightened beings. And I'm saying that because one book written by Gandhi's grandson, Arun Gandhi, it's a book that was translated to Portuguese, and I think in English the title of the book is The Gift of Anger. So we have to honor our anger to promote nonviolent action. the way we do it, now that's the trick. So Leymah Gbowee, which is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, she likes to address the public that she usually speaks to with a provocative question. She likes to ask, what are the similarities between Martin Luther King and Adolf Hitler? So usually many people say, well, they are human. Well, of course, that's something in common between them. But what she wants to bring up is that both of them were very angry people. But they choose to channel their anger in a very different way. And we can do that. This is accessible to us. Actually, Gandhi liked to say that it's much easier for me to transform a violent individual into a non-violent individual than transforming a coward into a non-violent militant. There's a very profound truth behind that. So I think, as I'm drawing to the end of my participation here, I think that in some way or another, you guys are promoting this event here because you are angry. And it's beautiful that we are here and that we're doing that. We are angry as we witness how things are developing in the world, and we want change. And we don't need to be violent, we don't need to kill to do that. Actually, that's the very core of what you guys are talking about. So I think one of the main challenges is that, and I agree with everything that was said, is that when we want to promote change, and very easily we like to criticize and point fingers and ask for change at the outside, we need to change from the inside. We have to look at our shadows, we have to look at our purposes, or things that warm our hearts and moves us to do something in the world. And I think that's very much related to what Gandhi said, well, be the change that you want to be in you want to see in the world. Not do the change, be the change. And that's very powerful. That's very powerful and very challenging. Very challenging because, as I said, we don't need to be enlightened beings to promote change. We have to accept our failures, our shadows, and maybe realize that with all that, we have the potential to transform things without having to be violent. Well, I will end sharing with you something that is very much on my mind lately as I'm working with restorative justice and I'm working with the criminal justice system, criticizing how the criminal justice system promotes violence as part of a discourse that promises peace, right? That's one of the main reasons that we put people in jail. And that's one of the main reasons that police kills people. Well, it's because we are fighting for peace. Maybe not so explicitly like that, but that's what's behind. And that's not making so much sense to me. And one thing that is intriguing me, and I hope probably some of you, is that there are many evidences from science that shows that violence is not healthy, not only for the people that suffers it, but to the people that promotes it. And that's something interesting about it. So nowadays, in the United States, there is a suicide epidemic in veterans from the armed forces. More people die by suicide in the United States in the armed forces than by fighting in the front of any war the United States is engaged with. There is something behind it. In Brazil, the rate of suicide from security agents is much higher from the suicide rate from the regular people or regular population. To be violent is not good for you, it's not good for us. And maybe there is something about our humanity that did not made us to be violent. And I think it's worth reflecting about that. So I was just, this is very much present in my mind because when I try to work with restorative justice. I'm working with institutional agents that promote this type of institutional violence, putting people in jail, taking people to jail, deciding that people have to go to jail, accusing people. And I'm trying more and more to talk about restorative justice in a way that, well, maybe in this way, you don't have to be violent, and maybe you can connect yourself with a purpose that makes you feel more self-worthy. And this might be an interesting pathway, you know, to try to transform things. So I will finish sharing with you the words of a person, a US American, that has been known recently as I don't know how to translate it properly. He almost perpetrated a mass shooting. He prepared himself to take a weapon, an assault rifle, to a school nearby his house and open fire and kill as many people as he could. He didn't do that. He almost did it. He planned himself, he bought the weapon, he took the weapon with him, but he was stopped at some point. And I'll very quickly tell you why this happened. But nowadays, he likes to do speeches and talks, and he works with psychological health professionals. And he said that he didn't do that because someone saved him at the very day he was decided to kill people. Someone that he had as more or less a friend. He didn't have friends. But this guy was someone that he cared about, and he decided to say him goodbye before doing this horrendous act, because he knew he would die. So right before taking his gun and going to the mall or to a school to do this mass shooting, he went to the house of this person and said, well, man, I'm going away. I would like to thank you for everything that you did to me and say goodbye. And then this guy, for some reason, realized that he was not doing well. He said, well, man, why don't you come inside? You can have dinner with us, and you can stay over, you can sleep in my house, and we can talk about it, and you just don't have to worry about many things today and tomorrow. And then he felt himself being taken care of. And this transformed his life. So because of this very simple act, he didn't kill a lot of people. And nowadays, and this is the last words that I would like to share with you, the name of this guy is Aaron Stark, by the way, if you want to look up his story and all that he talks about. He says that love the people that you think deserve the less, because those are the people that need the most. Love the people that you think deserve the less, because those are the people that need the most. People don't simply go out in a day deciding to kill people. Violence is constructed, is a culture. It's very complex. It's not in our nature. I don't believe it is. So I think when we are here, we are talking about nonviolence. We are here to talk about the possibility and the potential to do good things and to feel connected with a purpose, not relying on violence. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Luís. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I'll make a very brief comment. I know you have not much time because Professor Mathaib and Leandro still need to travel today. So I just want to make a brief comment and question, then I'm going to collect a couple of questions from the floor and then pass the word back to you. Today is the third day of this event, and I see a common thread emerging. And the message I hear is, it's time to rise. It's time to raise our voices. Because peace is not just about not doing harm. It's very easy. I mean, if the world would be a much better place if we just stick to that, just not doing harm. But that's not enough. What I hear here today, now, earlier in the morning, yesterday and the day before that, is that we need to make a stand. And there is a need for contestation. So peace requires contestation, the peace we're talking about, because when we talk about social justice, it's so much more than just not doing harm. So not only we need to not do harm, but we need to go beyond that. And I think that's the main challenge today. And Luís brought a few numbers and situations here in Brazil. And that's the thing maybe I want to explore, and maybe especially for Professor Mathaib, to dive a little bit into examples, because I feel that today we're not maybe doing our job right. And I think Luís shared this very wisely when he spoke of violence as a tool, and the need for us to think of peace and violence as technologies, and how do we do that? You know, how do we spread, or to use a phrase that was used in the first day, how do we make peace fashionable instead of violence, right? I don't know if Marité is here, but she was the one saying that. How do we bring peace to the table and make it like fancy? And showing, you know, that's the way to go, because that's what people are doing with violence, especially with social media. Especially with social media. So especially while Professor Mathaib was talking, I was thinking, what would Gandhi say today with the social media, you know, and because people have been using this very, very effectively to promote violence in all terms, like, being aggressive to women, to minorities, engaging people to take guns and whatever. I mean, these days also we had a terrible episode here in São Paulo where in a political debate one person took a chair and hit another opponent. And you have many young people, that's the scary part for me, applauding. You have many young people applauding this kind of episodes of violence and actually cheering for political candidates who say, let's be macho, let's take guns and such. So when you see young people doing that and you see what we're doing wrong, why is not cheering for a non-violent position? So my question is, if you could think about, if Gandhi was here today, how can we exercise our imagination to improve our ability to use the tools that we have today to make this change? And maybe, I don't know, maybe I was curious, for example, at your university, you're an expert, in violence and Gandhi. Are there any examples, institutional examples that you could share with us? In Brazil, differently from other parts of the world, we don't have yet an undergraduate course or an institute of peace studies. We've been bringing this, diluted in other disciplines. So we're kind of building the area. But what suggestions would you give to us to engage, the youth more proactively to bring this change about? So this is my question. I would like to ask people maybe to raise their hands and make very briefly a couple of questions so we can give the floor back to our guests. And perhaps if you want to make a question, come here so I can give you the mic because we're recording, I guess. So.
He said he wants to answer what I'm asking you. I think I will very briefly respond to the question and also to some of the questions that my friend hinted and also openly raised. One thing is about understanding what's happening around us today. Our education doesn't really teach us or helps us to understand the world we are living in, our living condition, where we are, how we are living. It's really misleading us. It is camouflaging the reality, covering the reality and misleading us in a very fundamental way. That's the problem. So we are under a great delusion that technology is in place and everything will be well with the world. I remember there was a great novelist who said God is in his heaven and everything is right with the world. Now God is displaced and technology is there in place and everything will be well with the world. So that's how we are being guided. So as he rightly said, we must learn to question. I will throw one or two hints or clues. That's what we require today. You see, he said violence is getting naturalized.
we think that violence is to be taken for granted. Violence is part of life. Violence is almost germane and organic to life. That's what we are made to believe. And this is happening because we are socialized into accepting violence. As children, parents, instead of trying to convince children, threaten children. If you don't do it, I don't know whether it is possible to threaten children today. Because times have changed, you have a number, if you call a number, and then. But that's how, and what happens? Children believe that using violence is useful. That is why people use it. But the simple logic of violence is that we believe that violence is useful, therefore we use it. We believe that violence is easier, and therefore we use it. And the reason why we believe both is we are naturalized into it, we are socialized into it. That is the problem. You look at the toys with which children play. There was a time, maybe 40 years ago or 50 years ago, children had toys which were crude weapons. Now, in the electronic age, they can simulate. So they play with guns which produces rays and sound and light and speed. You look at the games that are manufactured by technologies all over the world. And children are made to accept violence in different forms, and they think that it is natural. So we are socialized into, not only during our childhood, you are educated into, you are indoctrinated into accepting that violence is a natural way of living. This is what is really meant when he said that violence has become naturalized. It's not a simple statement, it's a very complex statement. And what is the way to counter this? How to rid yourself of this delusion, which has almost completely conquered your psyche, is to live consciously. We are not living consciously, that is the problem. We are living, just like Eliot, the great poet, said, we are living and partly living. We don't remember the life we lose in living. For us, living is more important. So we really lose our life in the process of living. So we have to live consciously. There's a big difference. Say, for example, Gandhi said that human beings are naturally non-violent. We must recognize that. I remember in a university in Mexico, I said that human beings are naturally non-violent. So non-violence is the law of our being. 100 hands were raised. Professors, teachers of psychology, and students and researchers of psychology. And they don't believe it. They don't teach it. We are naturally non-violent. Gandhi has a simple test, a very simple test. What is it that we human beings want? Non-violence for Gandhi is another term for love. Selfless, simple love. What is it that human beings want? They want to be loved and to love. That is our basic urge. That's not something imposed on you. That is something, naturally comes up. It's part of your psyche. That's what we call natural urge. So that's what we want. Human relations are possible only on the basis of an assumption that, you will be loved and you can give love. If you think that someone will not love you, on the contrary, hate you, you will not be able to establish a relationship. So Gandhi said that love is the cohesive force, the force that unites and keeps life together. Did any of your texts tell you that? Books of psychology or anywhere? So, that is why Leandro said that instead of peace education, we must have education for peace. Peace must become, the orientation of all, the component of pedagogy. The way you teach any subject can have a peace perspective. You can read any subject and teach any subject from a peace perspective. Gandhi gave the example of history. I'm sorry I'm taking time. Gandhi gave the example of history. When we teach history, learn history, how do we learn history? We learn history as a series of wars. The wars in Europe, 100 years war, 60 years war, then the First World War, the Second World War, the Gulf War, all. And peace is considered to be something interim, in between. How many years did the First World War last? It started in 1918 and it ended 4 years. It did not last 4 years. 15 to 18, I'm sorry. From 1915 to 1918. Second World War, we know, it was from 38 to 45. The rest of the period, how did human beings live during the rest of the period? We were trying to live peacefully. So peaceful living and love, living based on mutual love and mutual cooperation and mutual aid is more natural for human beings than fighting and waging wars. But we highlight only conflict, violent conflict, because that is more spectacular. Peaceful living is not attractive. There is nothing to report about. There is nothing to film about in normal, peaceful coexistence. So violence is more spectacular, more attractive, and therefore, it is displayed. Believe that that is more natural. That is how we are naturalized into violence. And therefore, there is a need, when you say there is a need to be anything, there is a need to live consciously, there is a need to question, the paradigms, the meta-narratives that are imposed on us by the present day world order. And the education system which we are part of is only one of the tools, is one thing, one tool in the toolkit to perpetuate this hegemony, the hegemony of violence. And therefore a very radical approach is necessary. I don't know whether we will be able to accept that. Yesterday when I was talking about Gandhi's ideas on basic education, I said Gandhi understood this danger in the mainstream education. So he said that he did not send his children or the ashram children to the mainstream schools. He built alternative schools and taught them. And don't think that they became idiots for lack of regular academic education. One of Gandhi's sons became the editor of a leading English newspaper in India, Hindustan Times. Another student, Gandhi's secretary's son, he became a leading writer, and he won the greatest literary award in India. He wrote both in English, Hindi and Gujarati, his mother tongue. Did not attend any formal school, did not attend a university, had no PhD. So we have to question this. And the third question is it possible? I know I was part of the academic system. I was in different universities. I know what universities are. And there is no difference between a university in the US or India or any of the Latin American countries. Universities are universities. We had proto models, and we are all molded in that. The British universities, the traditional British and European universities. And therefore, don't think that by offering a course, what happens? Instead of developing education for peace, we will develop peace education. What is the advantage? A new discipline is generated, a new school can be built, new posts can be created, new professors and deans could be employed, new researchers will come, fund will come. But if you incorporate the peace perspective into all subjects, that is what is required. No training is offered. So that is the problem. But I can say that there is no reason why we should give up hope. Even within these limitations, there is immense scope. If a teacher is positive, is creative, if a teacher at heart is accepting nonviolence and peace as a value and as a commitment, then in the classroom and in the rooms where you discuss with your researchers, there is no spy present, so you can have a free interaction with them. And sow seeds of new thinking and new perspective into their minds. So that is what is required. And that was how great minds were born, great writers were born, and great activists were born. Because of teachers. Teachers planted seeds in their minds. So that scope is still there within this rigid academic system. That is what I believe. In my limited way, when we were teaching nonviolence and peace in the university, which was founded by Mahatma Gandhi, many of the students who came and took the course are activists back home. They are trying to promote the cause of nonviolence and peace, like Leandro. Leandro is one of the many examples. So that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mathaib. So, anyone who would like to ask questions, please come over, share your questions with us. Okay, we have time for questions, please. Please come here so we can use the mic. Because they're recording.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. Just a quick question. Would like to know your perspective, each one of you, about the genocide in Gaza going on right now. Thank you.
Sim, se alguém quiser fazer alguma pergunta em português, a gente traduz aqui para o professor. Fiquem à vontade também. Podem vir aqui e a gente traduz. Então, por enquanto, tomem tempo para pensar em mais questões e, se bobear, eu vou acrescentar uma questão aqui. I'm sorry. I was just telling people if they want to make a question in Portuguese that we can translate. Oh, okay.
Good night. I'm Marilia Sousa Pimenta from the State University of São Paulo. It's a huge pleasure to listen to all of you today. As a researcher of criminality on borders and also on illegal governance from non-governmental actors, this is what I do on my research. So I'm getting in contact with a lot of data on affecting indigenous communities, especially on Amazon borders. Last year, in January, we got the news that more than 500 indigenous children, they died because of hunger, because of isolation, mostly created by illegal mining, connected with narco-trafficking in the region. So they're taking care of all the rivers, they're using massive arms, and they are also threatening the indigenous communities to cross over the rivers. As an international security professor on undergrad course, how can I stand and strong dealing with all this really difficult data, but also having to be very inspiring for my students? I mean, this is the main challenging that I'm facing right now, since all the data which I'm dealing with, they're getting worse, so it's affecting me a little bit. So I wanted to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilia. Anyone else on this first round? That's a tough dilemma, but then let me maybe get this opportunity to ask a little bit about Leandro's work, since it was also an example cited of a person who studied with Professor Mathaib and got into activism. Maybe we can get some positivism from your experience, if you could share a little bit also with us. So I'll pass the floor to all of you so you can make a comment. Maybe
about my experience.
And also, if you want to share the other questions, because there was a question about all of you, your opinions about what's going on in Gaza today, and also Marilia's question.
So I'll start with your question.
I start with your question. My work in Rio de Janeiro, I have an institute there that is called Shanti Brazil. Shanti is an Indian word that means peace. It spells S-H-A-N-T-I, Shanti Brazil. And this organization makes a lot of work for spreading peace, spreading nonviolence, like many courses on peace, on nonviolence. The main course is called Culture of Peace Journey, Jornada Cultura de Paz. It's the main course. It's a post-graduation course, so it takes the whole year. She's doing that. And another course on nonviolent communication, restorative justice. We also make some works in the courts with restorative justice, especially in domestic violence that we act. We are trying to spread men's circles in the whole state now. So me and another director of the institute, we are training people to facilitate men's circles in the whole state in domestic violence with men and also with women that are victims of domestic violence. This is another kind of work that we do. We also work in schools with Education for Peace. In 2 schools we are more present. In others we are, sometimes we go, but it's not something that we do often. And we have, let's say, we have more experience with Education for Peace because it's a work that we do in the last 11 years. So there are many branches of our works. That if you follow our Instagram, you're going to have a better idea of what we are doing. And the question that Miguel raised, our Instagram is shantibrasil.paz, shantibrasil.paz. That's our Instagram. You're going to see many different kinds of work that we are doing there now. Another question that Miguel raised, Miguel is a friend of mine. We used to be activists in Rio de Janeiro a long time ago when he was young. I'm still young, but he is younger than me. And this question about Gaza. Gaza is the main shame in the world right now. And unfortunately, I would say to you that I don't know where we are going to find hope for that, because Netanyahu is becoming a dictator. He's becoming he's trying to control the courts. You know what is happening, right? He's trying to control the courts, and he's maintaining this war only to be kept in power, because he's in the present moment he's not so popular, and actually he's trying to exterminate the people. What is it's a big shame that we have. And on the other hand, no matter who is going to be elected in the United States, the problem will be still there. So I don't know where we can find the hope in that situation, but we must find a way to resist and to support our brothers and sisters that are there. And about your question, I'd like to congratulate you for your work, but I don't think that I could give you a good answer. So I will wait for my friends to answer you.
I will quickly respond to the questions. Gaza genocide. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. I have tried in my own way to study the problem, not because the present crisis, but even before that. I've been to Palestine, I have talked to the Intifada people earlier as an activist. The first thing that we must remember or keep in mind about what's happening in Gaza is if you use violence, this is where that will lead to. Gandhi said in one place, there was the rule of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. There was a time when people believed that revenge was the sacred duty of individuals as well as tribes and religious communities. You have to take revenge, vengeance. And so an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Gandhi said that if you accept this law and put this law into practice, it will end up in the whole world becoming blind. And of course without tooth also. So this is what Gaza teaches us. If you believe in violence, in the use of violence, this is it will take. The Hamas people believe in violence. So do the Israelites. So it's two set of people believing in violence and the use of violence. They are acting and interacting. And what happens? As I said in the beginning, the innocent civilians are victimized. So, about the solution, that's a different question which has to be discussed at length. So, the lesson that what's happening in Gaza, the genocide, teaches us or raises before us is that putting faith in violence is going towards the annihilation not only of a particular race of people, but is leading to the annihilation of humanity as a whole eventually. And therefore, if you want humanity to survive and prosper, you will have to adopt the opposite way, the way of non-violence. That's my quick response to this. And about what is happening in the, this is not an isolated thing. What's happening in the Amazon region is not an isolated. This is happening all over the world. In India, it's happening. In Native American sacred land, it is happening. It's happening to indigenous people in Australia, even in New Zealand, in the interior parts of New Zealand. So this is not an isolated issue. And what is the only way is to build people's power and resist. There is no other way. I was reminded of the life of an activist in India. That's a great activist in India called Mathaib. She was a researcher like you. She was in the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, one of the premier social science institutes in India. And her research topic was very similar to yours. What was happening to the tribal people who were displaced as a result of development projects. And so she started a study, collected data. And finally what happened, I don't want to elaborate the story. Finally what happened was that she gave up her PhD and she became an activist. And for the last 40 years, she is staying with the tribals and fighting for their rights. They have won several battles, but they are losing the war. But they are persisting. I had a research scholar with me who did a study on child sexual abuse in Kerala, in my state. I told her, because I know Mathaib very well, she is like a sister to me, and I told her that, don't take it to heart. This is a PhD study. don't get emotionally involved. If you get emotionally involved, your study will be derailed, there will be other problems. But the girl who was doing the study, she got emotionally involved. And she fell sick. For 6 months, I gave her holidays, she was given counseling, and there were physical ailments as a result of this. So the question is how you approach it. I am not able to give you an advice because we have no close familiarity among ourselves. But be careful. If you want to protect the rights of the people, there is only one way. Be with them, stand in solidarity, build a movement, and resist. You may not be successful, but there is a point in fighting and losing rather than running away. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Leandro. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. It's hard to say something after that. But so I will start with you. I will try to remind another quote from Gandhi, and I think is one of his quotes that inspire me the most. So I'll try to remember right here in my mind. So he said that realization is not connected with a result. It is connected with your effort. So full effort is full victory. So this is we have to be careful not to romanticize that, because and I congratulate you for your courage, dedicating yourself to this type of work. Dealing with that is painful. If you are human and you are feeling pain, you are healthy. It means that you have a right mind. But we have to be careful. We have to be aware on how this impacts us with our mental health and all that. But you have to try to connect yourself with something bigger, with a purpose that moves you, and with the idea that differently from what is demanded from us since we are kids in this culture, is that we have to be successful and we have to achieve results. The main realization, so that's how Gandhi approached his political strategy, nonviolent strategy, is to satisfy yourself with your full effort, and you will feel realization with that. Again, this is not easy. This is such a huge problem. I think when I look at the issue of indigenous genocide, of course, there is this ethical part in it. It is wrong to kill people. It is wrong to kill cultures. But we were raised in this colonial worldview. But what I'm trying to say is that besides this ethical aspect, what drew me closer to the movement of protecting indigenous people is to realize that their survival is connected with my survival. So for the last 3 weeks, we were breathing smoke. Thinking about how important it is for us to enjoy and to learn from what those cultures have to offer in how to respect nature, for instance. This is directly connected to my survival, to my health. So think about the importance of the work you do, even dealing with those horrendous numbers. That if nothing else, what you're doing is contributing to the well-being of all of us. I work with the criminal justice system. Brazil is we have to realize that, people, in absolute numbers, Brazil is the most violent, you know that better than I do. Brazil is the most violent country in the world, if you consider the number of homicides, all by itself. This is mind-blowing. So when I went overseas to take a master's in peace and conflict studies, I studied with people from Egypt, Yemen, Sudan, Nigeria, Somalia, Syria, and I said, oh, those people, poor them. They live in a state of war back in their home countries. And then when I started to look deep in the violence, industrial production of violence in Brazil, and I compare the numbers, and I say, oh my God. We talk about war, and we talk about violence, and we talk about human destruction. And look, and back then, that was 10 years ago, the numbers in Brazil were around 50,000 a year. Then it got up to 60,000, and now we are between 40,000. It's so, look at where we at. We are so easily talking about 40,000 people dead by murder every year in Brazil. How to deal with this type of number? And I work with restorative justice. People look at me and laugh at me. Do you think you're going to do something? So you are accepting these people, those people that are doing wrong things, and what? And so I have to believe in each little step and each little achievement that my little humble work can achieve each and every day. So one day I dealt with a case of attempted murder that was derived to restorative justice. It was a successful outcome. Maybe you cannot believe it, but we could reach some type of reconciliation between the offender who tried to murder the victim. And the victim was the person that was looking after restorative justice. This person, which was a man, he said, that's what I was looking for, because the way things work, it's not good to me. Does not make me feel good. It doesn't work like that. So I'm very thankful that I was able to have this opportunity. And this is one case. And I have to be satisfied with that. With one case, there are 9 others that didn't work. And I have to follow through. So you know better than anyone else how hard it is. So be resilient and believe in your work. And I don't know what else to tell you. And other to say that I'm very admired. And genocide in Gaza, well, you said it, man, genocide in Gaza. First of all, I think we have to say it and recognize it. I think 2 days ago, I was watching a lecture. This researcher, he reached a number, and here we are talking about numbers, and this is so, we can so easily objectify people and humanity when we talk about numbers, but this is a meaningful number. He said that since October 7th until now, 70 children are killed in Gaza every single day. 70 every single day. And if you consider, this is already outrageous, but if you consider wars, regions of war, the second place, I think, I don't remember exactly if he mentioned Sudan or Ukraine, but it's 2 kids a day. 70 children every single day killed. Maybe, well, there's not much what I can say. I get emotional when I think about it. I feel myself, powerless, and it's not. But we have to do something. So maybe if we can think about it. I was just thinking about it right now. I'm sure many of you know that Brazil is one of the main small arms exporters in the world. One of the main business partners of Brazil. Guess who it is? Israel. Not only as a receiver, but as a provider for tools that our police forces use to kill people, to oppress people. So maybe, if you want to do something regarding our insatisfaction towards how Israel is oppressing and killing and genociding people, maybe we can have a word with our representatives, and we ourselves can start messing things up and doing good trouble relating the business, especially regarding arms and weapons, messing and causing trouble with the business between Israel and Brazil. I think we have to recognize that the logic that takes place there is a colonial logic. That's a colonial project. And one of the most destructive results of coloniality is genocide. It is still taking place here in Brazil. Marília is a witness. It's taking place in Gaza now. It's taking place in so many other places. Sudan, Ukraine. So, yeah, it's a challenge to deal with our powerlessness, but if we are creative enough, we can find ways to try to contribute. Again, I think maybe if we try to, maybe if not directly with what's happening there, decide to do something that it's reachable and possible for you now in your day-to-day life, look at it honestly and engage with that. But we have to name things, say it is a genocide, not feel intimidated when we have to talk about it, and be courageous enough to engage in constructive reflection.
Well, thank you so much. This was so insightful, and even speaking of really difficult stuff, I think we got some inspiration to keep moving with our work. So I would like to thank you all so much, special Professor Mathaib, for this opportunity. I know you were going through lots of different traveling, so it's been really such a good pleasure and honor to have you here. Thank you, Leandro, for providing this opportunity, and Luís for also joining us in this fruitful discussion. Let's applaud our guests, and thank you so much. Alguns avisos, aproveitando, just giving some notes about the event. Se vocês tiverem, fica à vontade, gente. A gente vamos fazer um pequeno intervalo para ter uns 10 minutinhos, enfim, né, tomar um café e ir ao banheiro. E a gente vai ter a nossa conferência de encerramento aqui do EBEP. E queria lembrar também que está marcado às 19 horas, já lá no prédio de letras, sala 24, vamos ter uma apresentação muito especial, uma sketch de um grupo de teatro que é feito, é um grupo de refugiados do Afeganistão. Vai ser uma coisa curta, eles vão estar representando situações reais que eles viveram. Tem um trabalho muito bonito, feito por essa diretora, Daniele Guerreiro. Então não percam, por favor, e é isso.